The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Theo Goodman from Haas Online.
Good evening, blockchain.
Gabriel D. Vine from Future Rant.
Thank you for having me.
Tone Vase from Liberty Life Trail.
Hey everyone, finally have a webcam, so now I can not get bored and film from different parts of the house.
Jeffrey Jones from the Bitcoin News Show.
Hello, thanks for having me. Hello Internet, hello Bitcoin.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to Issue 1. Issue 1. Banks push for an easing of money laundering rules. The financial regulations placed upon banks after the 9/11 attacks and strengthened by the Obama administration are under attack. Clearinghouse, a trade association representing the banks, claims that the rules are onerous and ineffective and is calling for them to be revamped and likely weakened. Theo Goodman, I ask you, if the money laundering laws are weakened in the United States, is this a good thing?
Well, that's, just like everything. There's two sides to the coin, even if that is a Bitcoin. But I've gone through the article and I'm going to do a screen share to share the most important points that I found that are interesting. It says, according to the article, do you see my screen share? Okay, I'm going to assume you do. Complying with anti-money laundering rules, including the manpower needed to file suspicious activity reports, costs U.S. companies as much as $8 billion a year. So that's a lot of money. And if they get rid of the regulation, well, I guess those people will just find other jobs. But that is a lot of money that is spent just on that per year. Also, for all you blockchain consultants, here's your chance right now. Check it out. The Clearinghouse will also call for the creation of an information sharing platform that will allow banks to share data among themselves with possible criminal transactions. There's your use case right there for the blockchain technology. Guys, get it. I'm sure you'll get a nice contract. And check this out. There's a cool chart. Suspicious activity reports are just going through the roof. Very bullish on that. Now, I don't know if that means there's more suspicious activity. There's more workers that are detecting the suspicious activity, or there's some motivation to report more activity, or there's more activity. I don't know, and I don't see how you can get that out of this, but there's a lot more reported. So I think that maybe it could do some good to take a look at this and reform it some.
I agree, Theo. It's time to put that suspicious activity on a blockchain. Just a reminder for all of our viewers to please like and thumbs up this show and to push share. It really helps us get more viewers. And thanks to everyone who's joining us live. Tone Vase.
Well, actually, I don't think this is great for Bitcoin. I think this is pretty bad for Bitcoin. It is very good for society, though. So, and I've been saying that for a long time. So as far as Bitcoin is concerned, what gives Bitcoin value is bigger regulations, because then Bitcoin becomes more useful to get around those regulations. Now, if the regulations get relaxed, then Bitcoin isn't really all that useful. And I always say, if the governments want to eliminate Bitcoin, all they got to do is legalize drugs, remove money laundering, legalize gambling, legalize prostitution, lower taxes. You do all that, and who needs Bitcoin? It probably wouldn't have been invented. If the governments start treating money as property, you really wouldn't need Bitcoin. And I'm just going to also share my screen for 1 second here. Nope. Don't want to go there. I want to go here. And it's an article that I wrote a while back that basically talks about this. It's titled, "When Banks Become Law Enforcers, I wrote this for Cointelegraph over 2 years ago. So if you want to just Google that, when banks become law enforcers, and I talked about this, all these silly laws like FBAR and FATCA, and how Bitcoin users really need to be careful because they're in violation of all these laws because money is a crime. I've been talking about this for a very long time. Right,
That's a heck of a platform for Tone 2020. Legalize everything, but it is bad for Bitcoin. Vortex, your thoughts?
Yeah, this is definitely some interesting news, but to me, I think like the other panelists said, this is long needed to have reform. When everybody's a criminal, right, it's hard for law enforcement or anybody to figure out who's the actual criminal, right? Because according to money laundering laws and stuff, how it is right now, everybody's a criminal by default first, and then they go and check your stuff, right? So I definitely, I agree with Tone that this probably isn't good for Bitcoin, but the thing is that there's no way that the regulations will ever be laxed enough. Like all the things Tone just mentioned, they're never going to legalize prostitution. They're never going to legalize all of these things. Like it would take decades and decades to legalize all that stuff. So Bitcoin's honey badger don't care, right? It's just going to keep on going just because they're never going to relax the regulations enough to make Bitcoin irrelevant. Not going to happen. So with that, we'll see what happens. But definitely we need some freaking reform on these money laundering laws.
Decades and decades, or a single vote for Tone 2020. Let's check in with Gabriel D. Vine. Is the hammering still continuing?
Yeah, it seems to be pretty hammery over here, but we'll see what happens. We'll see some. Let's see if we hear anything here. So yeah, I was just going to say that seems like a pretty typical money-saving tactic from the financial industry. Like they're seeing the Trump administration come in and claim, they've got the lip service that they're want to make regulations more lenient, the Republican business-friendly approach. They've got this lip service, so the banking and financial industry is just trying to take advantage of that. I don't think it's particularly interesting. I don't think that they're going to get very far, actually. And what I'm preparing myself for is lipstick on a pig. I think we're going to see like some tiny corner case being sort of loosened in the regulations, while the rest of the regulations continue to get more draconian. That's my prediction.
Tightening and tightening. Let's move on to the exit question. The banks will get their way. Yes or no? Theo Goodman.
The banks will get their way in that this regulation will be at least taken out and reduced and so on. Yeah, I think so.
Less money laundering rules. Gabriel D. Vine.
Can you repeat the question? I was listening to hammering and drilling.
Will the banks get their way? Will there be less money laundering rules?
I'm going to say yes, but then they'll not get their way directly after that.
Tone Vase, the panel continues to drift towards the banks.
I'm going to say yes as well. However, I think the banks will get their way in that they won't have to be as much of a policeman. On the flip side, I think the money laundering laws and penalties, I think they will be more severe. It's just that the banks are going to try and not to be responsible for being this, deputy policeman. At the same, and I think everyone gets the point. But I think FATCA is going to be really bad. Hopefully, Trump will remove that piece of legislation. But I think they're going to just create bigger and bigger crimes. Like you'll go away for like your life if you're a tax evader, right? They're already going to take away your passport if you owe taxes, right? So I think the penalties will go up, but the government will have to come up with their own agency in order to get it done.
Bring back the debtor's prison. Jeffrey Jones.
Yeah, I think that the banks will always get their way in the confines of the system that they built. So Bitcoin, of course, represents a system outside of the banking system, outside of the current financial system and government system. So I think that they're going to definitely always get their way within their own system, but Bitcoin will continue to make their system less and less relevant.
The answer is yes, the banks will get their way. I've only spoken to one anti-money laundering expert, but surprisingly, this is exactly the issue he mentioned. The suspicious activity reports. The banks have to file too many of them. The banks file too many to try to cover their own ass, another acronym, and it's a disaster. The government has too many reports. The banks are filing on everything. We're not catching more terrorists, we're catching less. The rules go. Moving on to issue 2. Issue 2. The price of Bitcoin continues to rise. Despite a third Chinese exchange, this time BTCC, halting withdrawals and strengthening their anti-money laundering practices. Meanwhile, a Chinese official went on state television saying that Bitcoin would continue to exist, in fact, adding that it cannot be killed. Is the Bitcoin and China situation settled news? Has it been completely factored into the price of Bitcoin? Is this the story that once caused massive shifts in Bitcoin's price, suddenly no longer a factor? Gabriel D. Vine.
You know, it's actually quite confusing, I have to say. You know, the question, you ask really good questions here. And, you know, the reason why I say it's confusing, of course, is because nobody really knows why any market action happens, even in the mainstream markets where there's a lot of media coverage, a lot of interviews, a lot of, you know, funds and hedge funds where there's people going on record saying what they do, and some transparency in investment portfolios. Even there, you never really know who's doing what and why the market's going up or down at any given point. You can only make guesses. And in Bitcoin, it's, you know, got several additional layers of anonymity involved. So it's really hard to say. I mean, you might have a situation where there was a lot of people outside of China doing trading on Chinese exchanges to take advantage of the wash trading, and they all left because they can't take Bitcoin out of the exchanges, and they have to use Chinese banks now to move yuans in and out. So maybe they're just gone, and they're just not even paying attention anymore. Maybe it was, you know, PBOK insiders, you know, doing, you know, trading ahead of the decisions that they knew about, and they just stopped because they can't move their Bitcoin out and in and out of the exchanges now. So it's really hard to determine what's going on, but we can say for certain that the wash trading has moved to Japan, and that trading in other countries has been picking up a lot this year, especially like India, which I have been expecting for a long time, you know, South America. So it's a very volatile and unpredictable situation with what kind of news is going to result in what kind of price movements. As far as the PBOK and what they're doing, I would agree with the general consensus lately that this does not appear to be crackdown in any sense. Instead, quite the opposite. I'm still of the opinion that the People's Bank of China sees Bitcoin as a wedge that they can use against dollar hegemony, and they are attempting to drag the Bitcoin exchange scene in China into the modern era with their heavy-handed regulation.
Petrodollar meet Petro Bitcoin. And welcome to Japan, the new leader in Bitcoin volume. Tone Vase.
Yeah, it's very interesting about Japan being the leader in Bitcoin volume, especially since they're the ones that are about to come out with like the strictest regulations following the bit license, right? And also, I haven't looked at those numbers on the volume numbers. Do we know if they've been normalized for currency trading? Because, you know, I mean, a US dollar is worth like 100 Japanese yen. So the person that put out the volume numbers, did they normalize for currency, right? Does it have the highest volume in USD terms, like if you convert, because otherwise that's silly, right? Then you have to divide it by 100. You really got to be careful with a lot of these statistics and numbers. Right, what was the question?
Yeah, why is China suddenly not a factor in the Bitcoin price, considering Chinese exchanges have blocked withdrawals?
Well, right, that's exactly why. I mean, the Chinese exchanges have blocked withdrawals, and a lot of that volume was bullshit. I mean, we knew it was bullshit. Again, if I share a screen for 1 second here. I mean, this is the Brave New Coin Liquid Index, and the only Chinese exchange in this index is BTC China, who was, legit, and then all of a sudden, between November and January, they decided to join the rest of like the Chinese exchanges with no fees and all this other nonsense. And look at this volume, and now look, we're back to not even being visible on my chart. So now I'm gonna, let me stop share screen at this point. So, and I've been talking about the bullshit Chinese volume for a really long time. I don't have to talk about it anymore. And that's about it. And people are getting nervous. I've been spreading a lot of FUD that the Chinese government is within jurisdiction to confiscate non-Chinese nationals' Bitcoins. You should really be careful about putting your Bitcoin, or you should be careful about putting your Bitcoins on any exchange, because you lose control of your private key. You have to be especially careful in putting your Bitcoin on an anonymous, unregulated exchange, but you have to be just as careful in putting your Bitcoin on a regulated exchange outside of the regulation of your jurisdiction, right? Because if you the U.S. exchanges got regulated out of existence. There's no more Trade Hill, and no one else was even able to do it, right? But in the case of China, if you're a U.S. citizen and you put your Bitcoins on a Chinese exchange that are being regulated, they're not being internationally regulated. They're not being regulated based on U.S. standards. They're being regulated based on Chinese standards. So if the Chinese regulation says we can take your Bitcoin as a U.S. national, because of anti-money laundering laws in China, there is nothing you can do about that. You can't sue Onecoin because that's the government's regulation on that. And I know I'm spreading this FUD because I don't want people to lose any more Bitcoin. Hold on to your Bitcoin. No one is forcing you to trade. No one is forcing you to put Bitcoin on these exchanges. So that's pretty much my view on it. I always thought that the only Bitcoin price that mattered was the USD price, because the USD is the world reserve currency. It's as simple as that. Don't overcomplicate the matter.
At least it's the world's reserve currency for now. Jeffrey
Agreed.
Jones.
Yeah, I guess I just have to echo a lot what the other panelists said. I see this as a positive. I definitely don't see this as a crackdown in any way, shape, or form. If they wanted to make it illegal, they would just make it illegal. If they wanted to wipe their hands with it, this would have been done. But that's clearly not the case. We're getting nothing but positive sentiment from PBOC and other places that that are actually just saying that that they believe in Bitcoin. They're not going to make it illegal. They want to help it, and so by further integrating these exchanges into their financial system, it seems to me that it's a very clear play and a clear move that they want this to last the day. They want this to be their like everybody else said. They want this to be their kind of their shining weapon against the U.S. dollar. So and even if they don't, they definitely see it as a possibility. Again, or else they would just make it illegal. So everybody understands, that all the volume was BS from China, and that's been said. But I do think that we're probably going to see a similar crackdown in Japan pretty soon if they just keep up the zero trading fees. Because I mean, zero trading fees is not good for the market. It's not good for anybody, really. It creates horrible conditions that just creates all of these these slides and prices up and down. So I will say that I absolutely love seeing Bitcoin price go up. Despite the fact that these withdrawals have been in place now, both Bitcoin and Litecoin, And now all three major exchanges now are, stopping withdrawals. And of course, they stated that it's temporary, but still, Bitcoin don't care. It just keeps going up. And so that's absolutely wonderful. And we'll just have to see what happens.
Can I just jump in here real quick to just add one thing? What I do like is that it sounds like the Chinese government is not scared of Bitcoin, and that's important. And I think that's a very good thing, the fact that they're not scared. So that's the one thing I wanted to add. The other thing I wanted to add is, as far as Bitcoin being frozen yet the price going up, it could be like one of these things where Bitcoin's frozen and people are a little nervous and they don't want to get caught like many have in the past, where Bitcoin gets frozen and the price goes up without them, and then they get priced out. So it's possible that people whose Bitcoin got frozen went out and bought Bitcoin by other means just as a hedge, like, okay, I had a risk, I had 100 Bitcoin, 20 of them were on exchanges at risk. All of a sudden it's frozen. I don't know if I'm going to get the 20 back. I like the nice round number of 100. Let me start hitting up local Bitcoins, and I'm going to make sure I have 100 in case something happens to those on the exchange. I'm just throwing it out there.
Bitcoin, the only thing so great that if you lose it, you just buy more. Theo Goodman.
Actually, I just want to clear up something that I think a lot of people have been confused on, and understandably, it can be somewhat confusing. And I have the screen share going on if I can find it. Oh, no. Okay, hold on just a moment. So there's more than one Onecoin. Okay, so Onecoin.com is not located in China. Okay, so let's just, because I've been accused of this, I don't know, that somehow I'm spreading FUD about this. I just want to clear it up. Onecoin.com is worldwide digital trading platform, et cetera, et cetera. It's a Singapore registered company, and its operations are located outside of China. So just so there's Onecoin.cn and there's Onecoin.com, and they are indeed two different companies. So a lot of times the crypto rags and other news media get it mixed up themselves sometimes, or they don't make a clear distinction, and people get confused and they think one thing, but it's not exactly true. So just to now, sure, the people that invested in Onecoin.com are in China, but the company itself is outside of China. So it's not exactly the same. So just keep that in mind when you read things and you're wondering about what people are talking about, and if you're confused, those are indeed two different things. I think that sure, it's not negative, and think about in 2013 and 2014 how many times you heard China banned Bitcoin, China banned Bitcoin, China banned Bitcoin, China banned Bitcoin. Oh, and look, another crypto rag published a horribly translated Google Translate version of some kind of Chinese press release that was done by someone on Chinese version of Fiverr. Yeah, again and again and again. And so, of course, the market is a little bit numb to these reports. There's already been a big sell-off. There already was some big dumps already. So maybe for the time being, the market had enough of that. Let's just see what happens.
Excellent points. Let's move on to the exit question. The price of Bitcoin this time next week, higher or lower? Gabriel D. Vine.
Higher.
Tone Vase.
I'm going to stick with higher. That's what I've kind of been saying the last few months.
Jeffrey Jones.
Yep, we are definitely in this bull market, and this bull market is not even close to have seen the end of it yet. So no, it's going to be higher.
Theo Goodman.
$888 down.
And Theo breaks the trend. Other than that, we have a clean sweep. We all think it's going higher, and you know what I think. Moving on to issue 3, Bitcoin ETF. The entire Bitcoin market appears to be on edge, waiting for the results of the SEC's decision on the Winklevi ETF. An analysis on Seeking Alpha claims that the probability of the ETF being approved has been misevaluated as a very low chance, while they believe the actual odds are more 1 out of 3. If approved, the ETF could cause the Bitcoin price to skyrocket. If rejected, it could cause the Bitcoin price to fall as disappointed speculators exit the market. Tone Vase, your thoughts on the Bitcoin ETF?
All right. Well, I haven't overestimated the possibility of the Bitcoin ETF happening. Look, I've been saying for at least a year, probably closer to 2 years, that the Bitcoin ETF is not only stupid, it's not going to pass. And I don't know why people think that it will. It's just nonsense. Now, of course, I could be totally wrong. I give it a 10% chance that the SEC will pass it. I'll give it like a 3% chance that they'll pass it in March. I give it like a 50% chance that they're just going to move the deadline. And I give it maybe a 10% chance that they're going to pass it. Just so dumb. And I don't know how many times people hit me up like on Twitter, like all the time with these ETF questions. And like a common question that I get is, hey, Tone, so if there's an ETF, what happens if Bitcoin Unlimited forks Bitcoin? And my answer to them is, no one knows what happens. That's why the ETF is not going to pass. Just like think about your questions, right? Like everyone's asking me like these what if questions, like what if the ETF happens and then this? And I'm like, well, because nobody knows what happens if this occurs. It would be the dumbest thing in the world for the SEC to approve the ETF. And I will once again, I'm not going to get into the details. It's in all other episodes. The biggest reason why the ETF is dumb is because the underlying asset can be hacked, and it's a bearer asset, and it can be stolen. So the responsibility of protecting that asset becomes a major, major problem when you have an ETF. The other problem for an ETF is if they approve the Winklevoss Bitcoin ETF, what about SolidX? What about Barry Silbert? What about the next Joe Schmo that's going to want to do it, right? Also, Wall Street Journal raised a good point. We have never had an ETF where one entity is responsible for the security of the underlying, the price of the underlying, and the maintainers. They raised a very good point. I tweeted it out. Also, the moment the Bitcoin ETF gets approved, there will be 100 entities filing an Ethereum ETF, and then a Dash ETF, and then a Monero ETF, and then a Litecoin ETF, and then a Onecoin ETF. I would be the one if I had some kind of a related business, I would be filing the Onecoin ETF paperwork just to see if it gets approved for the hell of it, right? I mean, the whole idea of a Bitcoin ETF is just ridiculous. Not to mention it's bad for Bitcoin. I don't know why people think this is good for Bitcoin. It's a giant honeypot. It takes Bitcoin out of circulation. It's ridiculous. Gabriel's laughing. Like the Bitcoin ETF would be terrible for Bitcoin. Anyway, I can go on and on, but I'll let other panelists speak. Go for it.
It's so hard to argue against all your eggs in one basket point there, Tone. That is really strong. I think, again, we want the ETF because we want people to invest their retirement funds, to invest their stock market funds, and to gamble with us on Bitcoin. And I think they want the large influx of funds that would drive the price up, but it's hard to fight what you said about the security of the asset. Jeffrey Jones.
Yeah, there's really not much to add. I mean, Tone kind of covered it all, but it's true. It really is kind of a stupid idea. It's definitely antithetical to Bitcoin. However, like you said, Thomas, there's only so long that people can hold out. There's only so much time that people can hold out before Bitcoin goes to 1,000 and 5,000 and 10,000. People are going to want a piece of this. They're just not going to let it pass them by. So it's this huge struggle between, you know, the regulation and the fact that there's so many people on Wall Street and other investors that want to make money off of Bitcoin, but can't because, you know, they can't, their assets can't touch it yet, or they can't touch it officially yet. So it's going to, like, I really think it's going to happen. Whether it's going to happen on March 11th, that's anybody's guess. But there's just only so much time that these people can wait, and so I think that there is a small chance of it passing, but whether it's good for Bitcoin, only time can tell. And yeah, it's really an interesting time. If they start making all sorts of other ETFs, like Tone said, the Ethereum ETF, oh man, it's going to be an interesting time. So really, if it doesn't get passed this year, it will get passed next year or the next year. You know, it's going to happen before the next halving is my guess, because that's when the world will really catch on and see that that's going to be really the next big huge price jump. So if it's going to happen, it is going to happen before the next halving, but we'll have to see as always.
I agree, Jeffrey. There is a demand there. People want this thing. And like Tone said, we are afraid of the Ethereum, Onecoin, the multiple ETFs, but there's another part of that where people are lazy. They don't want to learn how to hold cryptocurrency. They think it's difficult. They want to call up their stockbroker and buy it and be done with it. They just want to hold it as an asset. They don't want to know about private keys. Theo Goodman, are people lazy enough to demand the ETF?
Oh, yes. People are definitely lazy enough to demand the ETF. And they're even beyond lazy enough to demand the ETF as a keyboard warrior on our Bitcoin, our BTC, Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr, and all together. So
if only the SEC would make their decision via internet poll, we could get this thing done.
Well, yeah, what it is actually is, no, I'm not a lawyer, but they're not against Bitcoin per se. They're just trying to figure out how to follow the rules that exist. And it's not that complicated, part of which we touched on, and we touched on last week. We've touched on a few times on the World Crypto Network. That's why you should always watch the old shows. So here I've got another screen share, and here on our Bitcoin, someone posted a very good point, and this is correct. The thing is, right now, what everyone is waiting for is just a proposed rule change. So it's like this: if they don't say anything by March 11th, then it's the rule change is approved, not the ETF, just the rule change. If the rule change is a yes, it doesn't necessarily mean the ETF is a yes, but they have to look at some of these rules in order to fit the unique ETF of the Bitcoin ETF. So that's why it's a little bit more complicated than people think, and that's the main reason why last week I predicted that it won't get approved at this time. That they're gonna figure out another thing to delay. I can bring it back up, but they're gonna figure out another thing. Yes.
What's the rule? I haven't really looked into it. Like, what's the main rule that needs to be changed?
I think it's what you guys were about, that that they own all the asset. You know what I mean? that usually is not the case.
The ability for one entity to be so involved in the ETF, in the offering of the ETF.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, and yeah, I think that how can they establish that the Bitcoin is safe? You know, they have to somehow.
They can't. Oh, you mean like the Bitcoin like storage is safe?
Yeah. Right, they have to make a rule for that, right? They have to have some kind of standard for that.
You can't, right? I mean, it's like establishing that. I mean, it's not that. I mean, it's like securing Bitcoin is like securing your nuclear power plant facility. It's basically the amount of it's almost the same thing.
Sure. So now I'm going to have to go back and look exactly, but I believe those are around those 2 points are the main 2 points, and you know, it could be that they say, okay, even though you guys own so much of the, own all the Bitcoin basically, the ETF, it's okay. Who knows? It's even more complicated because I was watching the I'm Not Your Lawyer show, and he did the ETF, and then it was about the involvement of the exchange Gemini in the whole ETF thing and how that could work and all this. It just seems like there's so many moving parts to this still. I could easily see them saying, hey, the rule change is approved, but we're not approving the ETF now. Or we're saying nothing, it's approved by default, or they say no rule change. There could be all kinds of variations, but I just don't see the pie in the sky. This is approved and Bitcoin goes to the moon just because of it on March 11th. I don't see a reason why that should happen.
If they don't allow it, I think the problem will be what Tone's saying next time. Too many ETFs. Next time there'll be too many and they'll have to let them through. Tone, do you want to say something? Then we'll go to Gabe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Gabe, if you want to jump in now, go for it.
I was just talking on the chat here, and somebody brought up the fact that the Winklevi, they've got 100,000 coin, and it's kind of strange. Like, first of all, why do they want to make an ETF? Because isn't it more? Isn't
I can tell you why.
What's that?
I can tell you why.
Is it? Do they think they can make more money off of the Bitcoin that they hold by allowing more people into the space, or they just want the fees, or what?
They want the fees.
They want the fees. But I mean, in my opinion, if I had 100,000 Bitcoin, I would not want to sell that off to a bunch of jackasses. I would want to hold on to it.
They wouldn't.
And
they wouldn't sell it off. They would use some of it to back the ETF. But the moment money starts coming in to their organization, they're going to go out on the open market and buy ETF for those people, right? Like they don't have to sell their own. I mean, they'll commit some, but more likely they will be forced to use that 100,000 Bitcoin or whatever they have as like insurance, right? In case the ones, they might have to lock it up. I mean, that's what I would do if I was the SEC. What I would do is I would say, okay, fine. You guys have 100,000 Bitcoin. You have to give up your Bitcoin in a multi-sig and use it as insurance versus a completely separate cold storage mechanism of the Bitcoin that the people going into the ETF are purchasing, right? And all they're doing, they're gonna just lock it up as an insurance mechanism, and then they're gonna have a whole other problem once the value of the ETF goes above their holding of Bitcoin. But this shit gets very, very complicated very, very quickly.
Yeah, I agree with your nuclear power plant analogy there, and I agree that in general, an ETF is a clusterfuck. I mean, it's basically placing. It's one of the myriad trust situations that it's called the Bitcoin investment. Well, I guess the GBTC is called Bitcoin Investment Trust. And there's a reason why it's called trust. You're trusting, Digital Currency Group or whoever's running that now to hold that Bitcoin and not lose it down the drain or or get stolen from them. And
by the way, I think that one is a giant clusterfuck also, but I haven't really looked that deeply into it. I could be totally wrong, but from my understanding of it as of today, I think it's a giant mess that's maybe not imminent to implode, but it's going to implode in one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, geez, what's the lifespan of one of these trusts that's built atop, a very minimal trust system? There was a recent post by somebody. There was some article that I read this week that completely sidestepped the fact that the mining infrastructure spreads out risk so much that it almost entirely reduces trust. And they were just making these tired arguments that we should trust each other in society because it glues us together and it keeps us together. Just all the tired arguments of these idiots that are just completely downplaying capture that we see every day in our society that's causing so many deaths and so much suffering. Anyways, but it's just so funny to see, and I wonder what the lifespan is, Tone. I mean, you're really talking sense to me. I'm definitely not euphoric about the possibility of a Bitcoin ETF.
Yeah, no, it gets very like the if you really start thinking about it, like it gets so complicated so quickly. You also got to think about, well, what about all the current ETFs we have? Like, I know we have some crazy ETFs out there. There's ETFs on natural gas. Obviously, GLD is the gold ETF. And by the way, the gold ETF has only been around like 10 or 15 years. And these other ETFs, obviously the S&P 500 ETF, well, you need the S&P 500 ETF because a person isn't able to buy S&P 500. It's also fairly simple to maintain the S&P 500 ETF because it kind of trades itself based off the value of the futures market of the S&P 500, and there's plenty of arbitrage bots to make sure that they're in sync. You also have something like Vanguard that will go out and they will buy those shares of those companies in their right proportion to maintain the value of that ETF. I mean, this doesn't require any kind of security. In the case of a gold ETF, same thing. I mean, people ask for the gold ETF because guess what? It's actually a lot more difficult to go out and buy gold in pieces and pay this monster premium on gold than it is with Bitcoin. And also it was just more standard. Again, you have futures contracts for gold, so there's plenty of arbitrage going on to keep the price of perfectly stable versus the price of gold. These are deep markets. They're very deep markets. Anyway, I guess the only argument for the creation of an ETF that someone can claim, and it's hard for me to argue it versus me stating I don't like conspiracy theories, is that it would be advantageous for the government to get this honeypot of Bitcoin and create one of these things that Bitcoin goes in, never comes out. But on the flip side, if the SEC allows the ETF, then are they legitimizing Bitcoin? Can that go against the federal government laws? Are they going to be interfering with FinCEN laws, IRS? Who knows, right? I mean, this decision isn't just to the SEC. They have to first decide what the hell Bitcoin is. And guess what? No one knows.
Just a small correction. I think somebody said 100,000 coins, but they actually own 1 million coins because they were very specific about wanting to go and own 1% of the network. So yeah, which makes it even more insane, right? How do you secure 1 million freaking coins?
Well, but a million coins is like 7 or 8%, 1%.
Yeah, but so they've been able to secure them so far, and I applaud them for that. That's impressive, right? The question is, will they be as secure if they now have to share the security of those coins? Again, if I was able to secure my 1 million Bitcoins, if I had any, I wish, if I was able to secure my 1 million Bitcoin, the last thing I would want to do is outsource or share that security with others. It's just more shit that can go wrong. I don't understand.
I mean, they're probably not going to put the whole million in the ETF, right? They have to. They could put half that in the ETF and still have a successful ETF, probably. But still, like you said,
I agree.
I mean, it's still absolutely ridiculous to try to push that security on Wall Street. Yeah.
But by the way, this also, like someone said, why would they want to sell this many Bitcoins? Well, you know what? Maybe they're looking to exit their position in Bitcoin, and it's a little hard to get rid of 1 million Bitcoins.
It could be the other way, though, Tone, where they believe in Bitcoin so much they want to pump up their obviously huge position by bringing more Bitcoin users in with the ETF. I think Gabriel makes a really strong point that Satoshi gave us this fantastic decentralized asset, and every chance we get, we centralize it. We create Coinbase, we create ChangeTip, we create this ETF. We just endlessly want to just take this thing away from its true purpose and put it into a centralized database so that we can do all the old things to it. And I agree, the security problems are there, but we want to lower the barriers to Bitcoin and get more people in. I think that's what the Winklevi may be.
I'll throw another theory out there. What I think their motivation might be is that they want to be more famous than Mark Zuckerberg. And
I think
they're not
not
gonna
just
be,
famous, but also 6 million of these things, and you can make the price is expected. They say 1,600 to 3,200 is the new target if they're approved. That's fantastic. You have 1 million of these things. I mean,
right, I think they just want to be like more globally known than Mark Zuckerberg, and sitting on 1 million Bitcoins quietly is not going to get them there, right? I mean, had they been evangelizing Bitcoin like Roger Ver, they might be, like Mark Zuckerberg, but maybe that's not their personalities to be
I don't
something
know. Have
like
you seen
that.
the latest reports of Facebook? They're not just going to connect the world; they're going to save the world. Zuckerberg, he's a saint. He might be president someday. He's talking politics.
Yeah.
They've got a ways to go if they want to catch him. But I don't know. For me, there's just something amazing about having 1 million of anything and having it have such great value. I don't
also
know,
question that. I question 1 million. And again, I have no evidence of this. If I had to guess, I would say they might have like, maybe 300, maybe up to 500,000, and the rest is like other investors that they're unofficially holding for, right? Maybe they have some kind of a trust. Maybe they have something. I find it hard to believe that just the two of them own 1 million. Maybe their umbrella owns 1 million, and a third of that is theirs, or half of it is theirs. I would be very surprised if they actually own 1 million.
Well, it is.
I have another theory. I have another theory,
go ahead.
ladies and gentlemen. We don't know how many or how much Ethereum the Winklevi own, because they did buy into Ethereum as well. I don't even know how much Ethereum Classic they have. So they need the Bitcoin ETF to get approved so that they can do the final knockout blow and get the Ethereum ETF approved and exit both positions at the same time. Double dump.
fortunately, no one knows how many total Ethereum there are anyway. But let's go to Jeffrey Jones here. Go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick, I just wanted to bring up the point. That is a really good point that was brought up about how, the Winklevi haven't exactly been evangelizing Bitcoin. I mean, they say they claim they care about it, and they call themselves early investors and everything, and they bought that stuff. But what's really interesting is that they don't go to conferences, they don't talk about Bitcoin, they don't put up videos. The only thing they ever do is talk about their damn ETF. So that's just something to bring up and something to keep in mind. It's just really interesting that they own so much coin but do so little evangelizing about Bitcoin.
For the record, I did see the Winklevoss twins at the Money 2020 conference a few years ago when I was there. I heard they gave an intro to Bitcoin speech. I'm not sure how up on the subject they were. It's a difficult subject to introduce. And of course, the Winklevi are welcome on this show if you'd like to come. Tyler and Cameron, I just remembered your names out of nowhere. That's incredible. But let's try to move on to the next issue. Anyone have any more on this before we go?
That's incredible, Tom. It's amazing.
I can't believe it. Why should I know their names? I think of them as those rowing guys from the movie. But let's move on. Exit question. The Winklevi ETF will be approved, yes or no? And we'll start out with Tone Vase.
I'm pretty certain. I mean, look, I will be the first one on this show. Like, I don't know. We can you guys can propose some kind of a reasonable dare that I will do on this show if it gets approved, because I am so certain that it's not going to get approved this year.
Tone is, of course, forgetting that this is the year that Trump, the Cubs, and the Patriots and the Cavaliers all had comebacks this year. So let's not count this out. Jeffrey Jones.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to go with Tone. This more than likely will not get approved this year. But again, I really think it's going to get approved before the next halving.
Theo Goodman.
The answer is no.
Gabriel Devine.
Wow, this is really surprising because on Vortex's Bitcoin News Show on Sunday, the consensus of the panel was that they probably would get approved. This is very, very different crew here. And I'm going to be the fence sitter and continue with my opinion of 50-50.
The answer is yes. There's not enough reasons to say no, and they're running out of reasons why. Next time there'll be 12 to 15 ETFs. Time for the FCC to get on board. Moving on to issue 4, Bitcoin and Onecoin. The Bank of Uganda put out a warning this week about Onecoin and Bitcoin. The warning treats the two as if they were the same, linking the proud cryptocurrency with the MLM manufactured Quasicoin. What's important here is not the linkage between the two currencies, but why the linkage was made. Did the Bank of Uganda link Bitcoin to Onecoin out of ignorance, malice, or feigned ignorance? That is to say, does the government secretly wish to profit? I ask you, Jeffrey Jones.
Yeah, this is really strange, but again, I think it's just more FUD, more trying to confuse the people, because Bitcoin is already confusing enough. And when you start throwing around the biggest scam in the world, OneCoin, right next to Bitcoin, well, then it's pretty easy for the regular average Joe to be like, oh, well, wow, what's the difference? So more obfuscation, more FUD, and more trying to keep Bitcoin down, but it won't succeed.
They do both have coin in the title. Theo Goodman.
Yes, they both have coin in the title. Also, you have to think that, this is just the beginning of things there, and maybe they are a little unsure, just going with the safe side. And here in the screen share cheat sheet here, we're going to find the important part of information from the article. And that is that, from the perspective of the regulators, it's strictly monetary. And it says it's other than fake, it's also unacceptable. Both are not. So there's no need for a distinction. So basically, they think that there's no need to distinct between Bitcoin and OneCoin, because it is a threat to them, is more or less what they said when you go through the article. So, they don't care about getting into the details right now. Now, I just think it's just at the beginning. I don't think they're trying to, go long Bitcoin and then, FUD it or something in Nigeria. I think that genuinely, they have, Bitcoin Ponzi's and stuff like that going on, and people lose money, and they're just like, okay, we're just going to say, and they look further into it, and they're like, oh, we don't really like this. Let's just give a general warning, blanket warning, and, we'll go on from there. I think that, actually, it's also a sign that Bitcoin is growing there, actually. So when the government gives these kind of warnings, it means that there must be enough activity for them to take the time to give these warnings. And it's kind of free advertisement, even though it says scam and all that kind of stuff. People hear about it. They want to find out for themselves. Maybe they don't always believe the government either. Of course, so, it's a little bit of free advertisement. If the government is really threatened by it, they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot by giving it this extra attention.
Theo shows no respect for the Nigerian scammers. Jeffrey Jones unfortunately has to leave. Say goodbye. Go ahead, Jeff.
All right, thanks, guys. It's been a pleasure. Great show so far. So I got to get going, but keep it up. Keep talking Bitcoin. Thanks, guys.
Later, man.
See ya.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Gabriel D. Vine, your thoughts on Bitcoin and OneCoin?
I think Theo made a lot of really good points, and I think it's really a wonderful, extremely bullish sign to see statements calling out Bitcoin, and I think it's a wonderful sign for OneCoin to be included in the illustrious company of the premier digital currency of our age. That's not going to last too long, because their scam will eventually collapse. Might take another year or so, but I think it's wonderful. I mean, it's just great to see that Bitcoin is being noticed, and I hope that we have a lot more warnings like this, because as the the importance and especially the attitudes toward government in the world plummet so quickly from one month to the next as the true colors and ineptitude of governments is laid bare worldwide, the more warnings and negative comments about Bitcoin we see from them, the better for Bitcoin.
It is truly an honor for Onecoin. I hadn't thought of it that way. Tone Vase.
All right, so this is actually, like, I found this fairly interesting, and people are not going to like my answer. Because from the viewpoint of the Ugandan government, they're correct. They have absolutely no reason to treat Bitcoin and OneCoin differently from each other. Because to them, they're both like an illegal currency and value transfer, and it's not, legal tender for that country.
Why wouldn't we like that, Tone? Why wouldn't we like that you're saying that?
Well, no, because people are, I don't think you guys would on this show, but a lot of our listeners, well, maybe I think our listeners will probably understand by now, but in general, right? Like the Bitcoin community, for the same reason that when I say Ethereum is just as bad as OneCoin, people, get upset over it, right? Like I compare OneCoin to Ethereum, I compare OneCoin to Dash. To me, they're the same thing. So there's absolutely no reason why the government wouldn't think that OneCoin and Bitcoin are the same, because they're both interrupting their currency in the same exact way. Now, having said that, that article is actually pretty good, because the guy that's trying to run a Bitcoin exchange in Uganda is trying to fight this. And he's also absolutely right when he says that, well, the government wants to ban it for everyone, so because the government officials will be able to just buy it. And that's true in general, right? You make most of the laws that the government makes is so that only a select few can break those laws. This is why you want the least amount of laws possible in a society in order to keep like a rule of law and a civil society. But you want to only keep the laws that are like so important that not even a government official can break them, right? This is a problem in all societies. So I also totally agree with him when he says that the government only wants to put this law in so that, like they can buy the Bitcoin, but we can't. This is also kind of like gold was, right? When gold became illegal back in the 30s, but the government can own the gold, right? But the people can't own the gold. It's kind of similar to that. So, I understand both points, but from the viewpoint of the government, it makes total sense. I don't know. I don't know how else I can state it.
Let's go back over the question. I want to test everyone's cynicism. Did the Ugandan government do this out of ignorance? They don't know about Bitcoin and OneCoin. Malice? They don't like Bitcoin. They don't like OneCoin. Or feigned ignorance? They're going to attempt to profit by buying Bitcoin while their people can't. Just tell me like one or two words. Theo Goodman.
I'm going to go with door number 2.
Malice. They don't like Bitcoin. Gabriel D. Vine.
Yeah, I agree with Tone. They don't. They any alternative to their scam coin is competition, so they badmouth it.
And
yeah, so we're in consensus. We're all going with Malice. They just don't like both of them, and they don't want to waste time and resources separating the two. They're going to let other governments do it, right? Like let the U.S. do it. Like outsource outsource it to the countries they trade with, right? Like for example, I don't know who Uganda's main trading partners are. I know China has been coming into Africa a lot. Europe is a basket case these days. US is coming into into Africa, trying to anyway. Outsource the decision of what Bitcoin is to the superpowers, right? To the US, to China. Let them deal with it. And after they decide what it is, then do it. M-Pesa is different, by the way. I know it's not in Uganda, but see, that's a utility. phone minutes are a utility, right? They kind of can't prevent you from using phone minutes because everyone needs phone minutes. But when it comes to something like this that doesn't have any utility other than value transfer, now if someone can provide a utility for Bitcoin that helps the Ugandan government, we might be dealing with it a little bit differently, but so far no one's been able to come up with one.
If Bitcoin had that utility, who would be a fan of it here? Let's move on to the exit question. All publicity is good publicity for Bitcoin, even government warnings. Theo Goodman.
I'm sorry, I'm distracted by all the viewers in our chat. Thanks a lot for chatting with us. Thomas, please repeat the question again. I'm just too busy in chat.
I think you've almost half answered it already, but is all publicity good publicity for Bitcoin, even government warnings?
Yes.
Gabriel D. Vine, same question.
Yes, bring it on. Bring it on. Bring all the drama on, the fights, the hair pulling, the hopefully Trump will say something bad or good or neutral about Bitcoin, anything.
And Tone Vase, are we in agreement?
I think so. What was the question again?
Is all publicity good publicity?
I'm also distracted by the chat. Yeah, I think all publicity for Bitcoin is pretty much good publicity. I really don't see it, right? Because when Chuck Schumer goes on TV and yells about Silk Road, that was great. And the ETF news that may legitimize Bitcoin, that's also great. So yeah, all publicity is good.
We're in agreement. We're at an early point where all we need to do is get people to know that there is such a thing called Bitcoin. Anything that helps towards that is a good thing. Let's move on to predictions or story of the week. Theo Goodman, are you ready with a prediction or story of the week?
Please come back to me at the end.
Gabriel D. Vine.
Yeah, a little small story of the week. Samson Mao, I believe, chief technical officer for...
I think he's the COO. He was the COO.
Operations at BTCC. Is that correct? Chinese exchange.
That's correct.
He yesterday announced his resignation from his position there, timed exactly to coincide with them cutting off Bitcoin withdrawals from the exchange. I'm assuming he's feeling that the Chinese environment is too much at the mercy of the regulators and doesn't feel it's a good place for him to be putting his labor. I wonder what's really going on there. Be curious to hear Thomas's thoughts, especially on that.
The only note I'll add is just what I saw in the public tweet from Bobby Lee from BTCC is that Samson was going to spend more time with his family in Canada. So certainly it's very difficult if you're working in China, but your family's in Canada. So I do know both of them personally, but they haven't spoken to me about this. So I wish him the best, and I'm a big fan of his tweets.
Yeah, killer tweets. I have a feeling they're going to get maybe slightly better even because he won't have any muzzles at all, and he'll have more time.
Here's hoping. Tone Vase.
Yeah, I don't think neither one of us follows the other on Twitter, and I really should. I should probably reach out, talk to him. All right, so I'm gonna stick to what I've been doing, which is talking about price as my prediction. Again, I remain bullish ever since I drew that green arrow, though this channel's been around for ages now. It's going on years. And I am bullish Bitcoin. I had a little bit of there was a little caution flag, but I've been saying for weeks, not much to worry about right here. But once we break out above this previous high, which might be even tonight overnight, we're good to go. Here is the Brave New Coin Liquid Index, which is going to update in about 30-45 minutes. I was looking for this red line. Didn't quite get there, but we will. And I'm expecting this pattern to repeat. We've done it twice. Here is a very close look on the hourly candles. And beautiful. I have not looked at this in a while. we are back in my channel, which is perfect. Now we just got to get to the top of the channel. And as you can see, the top of that channel is already at 1150, which is the all-time highs. So I can't wait to bust out of that.
All-time high. Sounds great. And Theo Goodman, are you ready with a prediction or a story of the week?
Yes, indeed. I have a story of the week, and Rare Pepe blockchain trading, including Pepe Cash, has made it again in the big time. Not only can you find articles, the mass media covering Rare Pepe on Motherboard, owned by Vice, but also we are international now and also covering different languages. Now you can also find an article in the French newspaper Le Monde, and it is about Rare Pepe blockchain trading. It is about the Telegram group. It is about the blockchain artwork that is revolutionizing the way that the blockchain is being used. It's also talking about the price action. It's quite an interesting article, and they came into the Telegram, were asking questions. So you can also do Google Translate on it, of course, but maybe you should brush up on your French while you're at it. It's not that hard to get an idea of what they're talking about. And that is the story of the week.
And remember, you heard about the Rare Pepes here first on the World Crypto Network, thanks to Theo Goodman.
That's right.
I don't really have a story of this week. Didn't plan anything. I just wanted to say I was watching Cheers and I saw John McLaughlin on there. I was very excited to see that. For those of you who don't know, this show is kind of based on the McLaughlin Group, a political discussion group. John McLaughlin, rest in peace, great man. Also, shout out to You, Me, and BTC. They're doing live shows on Thursday night. You can check that out on the You, Me, and BTC.tc/live. And I wanted to thank Jeffrey Jones, the Vortex, for being on the show. You can check out his show, the Bitcoin News Show, right here on the World Crypto Network. Everyone be sure to subscribe below. I want to thank our 120 or so live viewers. Thanks to everyone for giving us a thumbs up, giving us a share, and of course for giving us a comment or for talking to us in the chat. That really helps, and it's great for the show and the network. And I'm afraid we're out of time. Until next time, bye-bye.
Bye.